Hello and welcome to Byju's Exam Prep IAS. Welcome to the daily quiz discussion for the 2nd of August 2022. Before we begin, an important announcement. We are glad to announce that Byju's Exam Prep IAS is now on Telegram. You can join us by either scanning the following QR code or through the following link. Additionally, you will find the link in the description box below. Subscribe to our channel for regular updates on current affairs and our other initiatives. Beginning with the first question of the day. It reads, consider the following statements about lumpy skin disease. There are three question statements given here. The first one reads, lumpy skin disease is a viral disease that affects cattle. The second statement reads, there are no vaccines currently available against the disease. And the third statement reads, the mortality rates are above 90% in infected animals. Which of the above statements is or are correct? Please have a look at the options given. Now, what is the context? This article from the Hindu takes note of the spread of the lumpy skin disease in cattle in the states of Rajasthan and Gujarat. The article takes note of the death of a large number of livestock in the state of Gujarat and Rajasthan. And it also notes the steps being taken up by the administration to contain the spread of this disease. Coming back to the question, consider the first statement. This is correct. Lumpy skin disease is a viral disease. It is caused by the Capripox virus and it mainly affects cattle and buffalo. The lumpy skin disease is primarily a vector-borne disease. It is spread primarily by mosquitoes, flies, and wasps, which bite healthy cattle after biting infected cattle. In this way, the virus is transmitted from one cattle to the other. Sometimes this disease spreads also through direct close contact. It can spread through direct contact with the mucus of the infected cattle. Consider the second statement. This statement is wrong. Why? Because there are vaccines available against the disease. Also, the third statement is wrong. Why? Because the mortality rates are not above 90%. They are less than or around 10%. Notably, those animals which are vaccinated against the lumpy skin disease have better survival rates against the disease. Also note, the lumpy skin disease is curable. Recovery will be fast, especially when treatment is given at early stages of the infection. The main symptoms of the lumpy skin disease are general fever in animals, discharge from eyes and nose, excess salivation, blister-like nodules on the body, reduced milk production, and difficulty in eating. If these symptoms are not curtailed, this can sometimes lead to death in animals. Since the question asks for the correct statements, the answer to this question would be option A, one only. Moving on to the second question. It reads, which of the following statements is or are correct with respect to exercise pitch black? The two question statements are as follows. It is an annual multilateral air warfare training exercise hosted by the Royal Australian Air Force. The second statement reads, India has been a participant in this exercise since its inception. Please have a look at the options given. What is the context? This article from the Hindu takes note of the upcoming exercise pitch black. This is a biennial exercise, that is, it is held once in 2 years and is hosted by the Australian Air Force. This exercise generally takes place in northern Australia's bases of Darwin and Tyndall. Around 17 nations have confirmed their participation in the upcoming edition of the pitch black exercise. The main aim of this exercise is to practice offensive counter-air and defensive counter-air combat in a simulated war environment. India too is scheduled to take part in this pitch black exercise in Australia. Coming back to the question. From our discussion, it is clear that it is not an annual event, but it is a biennial event. Hence, the first statement is wrong. Also note, the second statement is wrong. Why? Because this exercise has been going on from some years. India first participated in the exercise only in the year 2018. Also, the 2020 edition of the Pitch Black exercise was cancelled due to the COVID pandemic. And the upcoming 2022 exercise will be only India's second participation. Since the question asks for the correct statements, the answer to this question would be option D, neither 1 nor 2. Moving on to the third question, it reads, India has signed and ratified which of the following? The first one, Antarctic Treaty. The second one, Protocol on Environment Protection to the Antarctic Treaty. And the third one, Convention on the Conservation of Antarctic Marine Living Resources. Please have a look at the options given. Now, what is the context? This article from the PIB takes note of the Parliament passing the Indian Antarctic Bill 2022. This bill is aimed at having India's own measures for protecting the Antarctic environment and dependent and associated ecosystems. Speaking about the bill in the Parliament, the Union Minister of State, Independent Charge for Earth Sciences, Dr. Jitendra Singh, noted that the bill is in pursuant to India's accession to the Antarctic Treaty, the Protocol on Environment Protection to the Antarctic Treaty, as well as the Convention on the Conservation of Antarctic Marine Living Resources. With this, let's get back to our question. From our discussion, it becomes clear that India is part of all these three treaties, conventions, or protocols. Hence, the right answer would be option D, 1, 2, and 3. But let us understand each of these in brief. Starting with the third one, the Convention on the Conservation of Antarctic Marine Living Resources. This convention was signed in the year 1980. It aims for the preservation and conservation of marine living resources in Antarctica. India ratified this convention in the year 1985 and subsequently became a member of the Commission for Conservation of Antarctic Marine Living Resources under that convention. Next, the Protocol on Environmental Protection to the Antarctic Treaty was signed in 1991. Since this protocol was signed in Madrid, this is also known as the Madrid Protocol. This aims to strengthen the Antarctic Treaty System for the development of a comprehensive regime for the protection of the Antarctic environment and dependent and associated ecosystems. Notably, while this protocol came into place in the year 1991, India signed only in the year 1998. Also note, India is also part of the Antarctic Treaty. The Antarctic Treaty was signed in the year 1959 for making Antarctica a demilitarized zone to be preserved for scientific research only. Note, Antarctica is defined as all of the land and ice shelves south of the 60 degrees south latitude. Note, India was not the original signatory of the treaty. It became a part of the treaty only in the year 1983. Moving on to the fourth question. It reads, consider the following provisions of the Minimum Wages Act 1948. The two statements are as follows. It prescribes fixing, reviewing, and revising the minimum wages of even the migrant laborers employed in the scheduled employments. The second statement reads, the concerned administration is mandated to revise the minimum rates of wages at intervals not exceeding 5 years. Which of the above provisions are correct? Please have a look at the options given. Now, what is the context? This article from the PIB evaluates the enforcement of minimum wages under the Minimum Wages Act of 1948. Additionally, this article evaluates the enforcement of Minimum Wages Act specifically with respect to migrant workers. Coming back to the question, the first statement is correct. Why? Because even the migrant laborers employed in the scheduled employments come under the ambit of Minimum Wages Act of 1948. The second statement is also correct. Why? Because the concerned administration, it can be either the union government or the state government, is mandated to revise the minimum rates of wages at intervals not exceeding 5 years. Please note, the last revision was done in the year 2017 and the next one is due in 2022. Since the question asks for the correct statements, the answer to this question would be option C, both 1 and 2. Moving on to the last question of the day. This is a question from the 2019 UPSC Prelims paper. The question reads, which of the following is issued by registered foreign portfolio investors to overseas investors who want to be part of the Indian stock market without registering themselves directly? The four options are as follows. A. Certificate of deposit. B. Commercial paper. C. Promissory note. And D. Participatory note. The correct answer here is participatory note. Participatory notes, also known as P note, are overseas derivative instruments that have Indian stocks as their underlying assets. This allows foreign investors to buy stocks listed on Indian exchanges without being registered. Additionally, let us also try and understand what these terms stand for. Note, the certificate of deposit is a short-term instrument issued by commercial banks and special financial institutions, which are freely transferable from one party to another. These have a maturity period ranging from 91 days to 1 year. While commercial paper is a short-term debt instrument issued by companies. This is issued with the primary aim to raise funds, generally for a time period up to 1 year. So the main difference between certificate of deposit and commercial paper is the issuing authority. While certificate of deposit is issued by commercial banks, commercial paper are issued by companies. Please note, commercial paper is an unsecured money market instrument, which is issued in the form of a promissory note. Now, what do we mean by promissory note? A promissory note is a financial instrument that contains a written promise by one party to another to pay a definite sum of money. Next, moving on to the fact of the day, small satellite launch vehicle. What is the context? This article from the Indian Express takes note of the maiden flight of the small satellite launch vehicle on August 7th. On its first flight, the SSLV will carry one of India's Earth observation satellites, EOS-2, which will have applications in mapping and developing various GIS applications. Also, it will carry another satellite called Azadi Sat. Note, Azadi Sat is a satellite developed by 750 rural students from across the country, coordinated by Space Kids India, a space startup. In this context, let us understand a few basic aspects related to Small Satellite Launch Vehicle. Note, the Small Satellite Launch Vehicle, or short for SSLV, is a small lift launch vehicle developed by the Indian Space Research Organization. It will be primarily used for the launch of small satellites. This SSLV will have a payload capacity of 500 kg to low Earth orbit or 300 kg to Sun synchronous orbit. Please note, the SSLV, just like Polar Synchronous Launch Vehicle, that is PSLV, will have the capability to support multiple orbital drop-off. A new spaceport is under development near Kulasekara in Tamil Nadu, which will handle SSLV launches when complete. As of now, they will be launched from Sriharikota only. Next, let us understand the significance of these SSLVs. The SSLV will help launch small satellites at drastically reduced price and at higher launch rates as compared to PSLVs. The SSLV launches is likely to cost just one-fourth of the current PSLV launches. Also, the SSLV can be assembled by a team of 6 people within 7 days. Compare this with a PSLV, which requires a team of around 600 people to work for at least 2 months to assemble it. Hence, the turnaround time for SSLV would be much faster. Hence, SSLV will give a major boost to space-based activities in India. This is all we have for today's discussion. If you are liking our initiatives, please do like, share, comment, and subscribe to our channel. Thank you for being with us.